Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is episode 2 of the Andalusia Knits video podcast. I had so much fun filming the first episode and talking about my knitting with you all that I knew I was definitely going to be back for round 2, and today's episode might be even longer than the first one. And I want to quickly say thank you here at the beginning because I was very overwhelmed and stunned at the response I had to my first video. I was not expecting to get that many views. I was not expecting to get that many nice comments or subscribers. So thank you all for everyone who tuned in, and I hope that it continues to be a great podcast. So today on the episode, it's going to be a pretty standard fare. I'm going to start out with some finished objects. And then I'm going to do a little segment on my history with hand spinning because I talked about my history with knitting last time, so I thought I'd go into a little bit about my spinning life. And then finally, I'll finish up with some works in progress and some projects and patterns that I've got percolating in my brain and I'm working on currently. Before we get started with the main part of the episode, I did want to take a quick moment and answer a couple questions that I got in the comments from episode 1. And the one that multiple people wrote in and asked was, how did I come up with the name Andalusia Knits? They were curious if maybe I was from the Andalusia region in Spain or had family from there. And no, it's not named after the place in Spain. I picked Andalusia Knits because of the author Flannery O'Connor. And her family farm, which is in Milledgeville, Georgia, is also named Andalusia. And she's hands down my favorite author. And I knew when I was coming up with a handle for my online presence that I wanted something to do with her. And Andalusia is just such a beautiful sounding word, and it really fit with the vibe that I was trying to go for. So yeah, I picked that because of Flannery O'Connor and not because of the region in Spain. And the other question I got was about more about my knitting history. One lady wrote in and very reasonably asked to know more about like my early knitting life, because in episode 1 I kind of just like discussed I learned how to knit and then moved on and didn't really talk about like how exactly I learned how to knit. So I thought I would discuss a little bit more in depth about my knitting history in the early days. And mostly, honestly, it's I'm a product of this age, and I very much learned how to knit by cobbling an education together through YouTube tutorials. As I would encounter a new problem or a new technique that I needed, I would look up how to do it. I have a few books, and in the early days, I had a couple like how to knit general, overview books. But honestly, mostly it was just like leaping from YouTube tutorial to YouTube tutorial to get me where I wanted. And in those early days, I really loved Stacy from Very Pink Knits. Her tutorials are great, I think, for beginners because they're very no nonsense. She doesn't really go a lot into the why of a lot of techniques, but her descriptions of how they're done are very clear and very good. And for a beginner, like a lot of times you don't have the brain power to like be thinking about why I'm moving the yarn this way and try to figure out how to do the technique itself. But then as I got better as a knitter, I found myself gravitating towards more Roxanne Richardson and her tutorials because, as I got better of a knitter, I did become more interested in the whys behind the different techniques. And Roxanne is really good about explaining not only how to do the technique, but also talk about how it works and how you can modify it if you want to do that way. So yeah, like I said, my history, it's all self-taught and it's mostly YouTube tutorials. Like I said, I have a modest collection of knitting books, but a lot of those are more Stitch dictionaries as opposed to educational books. And yeah, that's just a little bit more about my early knitting history. Alrighty, so I thought we would start today with some finished objects, and these are both designs that I did myself. Unfortunately, one of them I'm not crazy about, but one of them I am crazy about, and we'll start with the good one first, and that is the auger cowl. And this is available currently for download on Ravelry. It came out in May, so it's a couple months old, but it's still pretty recent. And this is knit on Knit Picks Wool of the Andes sport weight yarn and High Desert sport weight yarn on size 2 needles. And it uses some stranded color work, and we got Latvian braids here, and then we also have some 2-color seed stitch at the top and the bottom. I don't know if you can see that there. And this is a really fun cowl. I wanted something kind of close. Let me see if I can put this on now. I wanted something a bit close fitting because when I wear a cowl, I really want, first and foremost, to be able to do this and pull it up over my nose when it gets windy and cold. So I kept it kind of close fitting, but if you are not crazy about this close fitting look, it actually comes in 4 different sizes. And honestly, now that I'm on camera wearing this, it kind of looks like a really colorful neck brace. I don't know how I'm feeling about the close fit now that I've like it's reflected back to me. But anyways, it comes in 4 sizes. It starts in size 24 inches, 26, 28, and 30 inches. But that being said, like I said, if you don't like the close fit, the repeat that it's built off of, this little zigzag or arrow formation, it's only about like an inch or so wide, so it's quite easy to resize this to whatever size you'd prefer to have it. Let's see, what else do I need to say about this? Oh, the color work. I don't know if you noticed, but the color work on this is a little unusual in that I am experimenting with using pearl bumps on the right side of the stranded color work. And while it's a really cool effect, it's not particularly a difficult technique to do. If you know how to do regular stranded color work already, and you know how to do knit purl ribbing, you have all the techniques already at your disposal. It's just a matter of sometimes you bring the contrast yarn to the front of the work to purl those stitches, and then you bring it back to the back of the work when you're done purling those stitches. It's really not, it looks a lot cooler and a lot more complicated than it actually is. So this cowl was inspired, like the next finished object you're going to see, by my obsession with the ballets of Igor Stravinsky, and in particular his ballet The Rite of Spring. And I called this the Augur Cowl in honor of the section in the first act that's called the Augurs of Spring. It's a pretty, like, musically, it's a pretty famous section of the ballet where you have these very, like, pulsating sort of irregular accents on the beats. And so I was trying to create sort of that accented look with these little triangle arrow zigzag things going on. And then I chose the colors based on a palette that I thought would fit the early spring. And one last interjection about the Augur cowl. I know somebody would ask if I didn't show them, so I got to show the floats. This is the inside of the cowl, and not to brag, but I have to say that my floats look pretty nice here. I have no complaints float-wise. But anyways, that's all I wanted to show, and that's the Augur cowl, and it is available for download now on Ravelry, and I'll have the link in the description below. So now it's time to move on to the finished object that I am not particularly crazy about, and that is a scarf I designed. It's my most recent finished design called the Chosen One scarf. And to discuss why I don't like it, I think it's going to require me to explain a little bit of backstory about the inspiration. And so, like I said with the previous finished object, both of these are inspired by Igor Stravinsky's ballet, The Rite of Spring. And in the ballet, the Chosen One is basically the lead dance role. She's the star of the show. And in Act 2, the Chosen One, along with another group of young women, are doing some sort of like mysterious circle dance. And at a certain point in this dance, the Chosen One is selected by fate, and she falls out of step with the other dancers. And at this point, she becomes the human sacrifice, and the rest of the act is basically her just dancing herself to death in this human sacrifice for the sake of her community, which is kind of a weird inspiration. But the reason that I am not happy with this is that I went too literal with the concept. I told the story like in the scarf. You can see exactly like what's going on in the ballet via the scarf. So we start here on one end, and we've got sort of like, these were supposed to be like flower people or something. I wanted them to be like vaguely human-y. They kind of look like those are hands, but those could also be petals or something. And then as we like move up into the sky, we've got like the bugs, because this is like a primordial setting. And then we have all this these zigzag lightning bolts going on. And then here in the centerpiece, this was, for whatever reason, my depiction of fate as sort of like this rupture in the red fabric. It's this stockinette blue breaking through in the sea of reverse stockinette red. And then as you move down the other half of the scarf, it's basically a reverse image of what you've seen on the first side, except you see now that the middle flower person or whatever that was supposed to be, they have officially been chosen at this point, and they are no more. And so, like I said, I was so excited about this idea because I love this ballet so much. But it's just too literal. It was just not enough concern for like the fact that this is a scarf. This is supposed to be worn. This is not, I wasn't trying to make a tapestry. I was trying to make a scarf. And so, like, it's not, like I said, it's not the end of the world. I don't hate everything about this. I think one thing that I'm very proud of that I did in this was the color choice. When I'm picking colors, picking yarn colors, I have a tendency to either go super duper boring and predictable or just completely out in left field, wild and bright and way too crazy. But I think that these different shades of like blue, green, and blue, along with the contrast red, I think it really works. I think that it's sort of like a happy middle ground, at least in my color journey. What else did I want to say about this? Oh, the other thing that I'm not super pleased about, but this is totally fixable, and I will go back and unpick this and fix this, is I knit the first 2/3 of this. So basically the bottom half and the center piece was knit as one piece. And then I went back and this final third of the scarf, I knit it from the bottom up again so that it would look identical to the other side, and then grafted the two pieces together. And I've done some grafting on sock toes before, but I have never done like literally grafting two completely separate pieces of fabric. And as you'll see, I did not do a good job at all. And there are some tension issues there, which those are easily fixed by just like manually picking the individual stitches. But I don't really see any reason to do that right now because there are some like big mysterious gaps that I got. I definitely should have practiced this on a swatch before I did it on the real thing, but it's too late for that now, so I'm going to have to unpick it and be a little more careful when I graft it next time. So, like I said, that's another thing I'm not crazy about on this scarf, but that's at least a fixable thing. That's something I can do something about. So, you know, not a complete win, but I wouldn't consider this scarf a fail either. It's just sort of like a weird lesson learned. Now, I'm glad that I got one of these out of the way early so that I can be on the lookout for trying to be too like conceptual in my ideas and really remember that these are like garments that I want people to actually knit and wear. And I think that's going to do it for the finished objects today. So now I wanted to do a little segment on my history with hand spinning and take a look at all of my spins that I've done. I talked about my history with knitting last episode, so I thought it would be fun to do another little history chat about how I've gotten to where I am today. And my beginnings with hand spinning were pretty common. I don't have a very exciting story as to why I got into hand spinning. Like a lot of hand spinners, I started learning about yarns that were difficult to find commercially. So like rare breed specific yarns or yarns that are spun with an unusual construction. You know, like woolen spun is more, I mean, it's out there on the market, but it's more difficult to find than a worsted spun usually. And so I started like learning about all of these yarns that I wanted, but I would have difficulty obtaining. And so for a lot of knitters, it's a lot easier to just learn how to spin them yourselves because for whatever reason, the unspun fiber tends to be a little more readily available than finished yarns with these that are done in these unusual constructions or that are done with rare sheep breeds. And so like with knitting, I was self-taught. I bought a drop spindle off of Amazon and got to work watching YouTube tutorials. And I started, you know, like a lot of drop spindlers, doing the park and draft method, and that is where you let the spindle spin for a while and then stop and like park it between your legs and draft out the yarn that way. And that's a great way to start, but it's a very slow process. And eventually I wanted to learn how to be able to like stand up or like walk around and do the drop spindle. And unfortunately, I ran into a problem in that a lot of the YouTube tutorials that I was finding had a lot to teach you about the park and draft method, but did not have a lot to say about how to like get going with the traditional method of like drafting the fiber as the spindle is actually spinning. And so that was sort of something I just had to trial and error myself, the trial and error my way through that problem. Now I know there are like books out there like Respect the Spindle and those sorts of books that I'm sure have a lot of information about how to use a drop spindle in the traditional way, but for whatever reason, I thought I would just rather suffer through like trying to figure it out myself. And so over the course of the last couple of years, I started in about this time in 2023. And so over the course of the last couple of years, I have sort of just like trial and errored my way to like a drafting method that works for me. And I'm really having fun with the drop spindle. And one day in the future, I'd like to get at least an e-spinner. I don't really have room for a traditional spinning wheel right now, but e-spinners, those definitely look kind of attractive to me. But at the same time, even the cheaper models, it's kind of hard to justify that cost because while I do enjoy spinning, it's not like knitting where like it's every single day. I am at least a couple stitches. I am knitting something. Spinning is more I'm spinning it as like I encounter cool fiber or I think of like a project that I want to do. It's not like the thing that I like wake up and think about doing. So like I'm spinning on more of like a per project basis as opposed to like an all the time sort of thing. And so so I thought we would take a look at some of my spins starting with the early ones. And if you were here for episode 1 of my early knits, you won't be disappointed. These are just as questionable and scary looking as my early knits. So let's get started with some early spins, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the earliest spin left I have in my possession. This is some fiber that came with my drop spindle off of Amazon, and it is merino, and I hated working with it, and it's probably partly to do with the fact that I was a complete beginner, but as I've gotten better at spinning, I have learned that merino is not necessarily the best thing to give a complete beginner because while it is super soft and it's very readily abundant and available, it's not, of all the common sheep breeds, it's not the most easy one to draft. And so yeah, this early one, I'll probably never knit anything with this. I would like to, I will keep this one probably forever just to, so I can see where I've come from. But yeah, it is very thick and thin. It is basically just like lightly twisted roving in places. It's not a great, not a great look. And so let's see. I've got another one, and this one, I believe this one might be merino as well, or this could be Coriadale. I bought some additional Coriadale off of Amazon that first time that I bought that spindle. And so you can see in this one, I'm getting better. Like I don't want to say that the yarn is definitely not consistent, but it's absolutely more consistent than the original one. Still very, very thick and thin and very, it looks like the plies are very loosely twisted, but then they are just like super like plied together, very tight around each other. So yeah, this is another one. Honestly, I might throw this one away. That first one, that one is definitely older and has more meaning. This one doesn't evoke any feelings in me except for like negative ones. So we'll see. So the next one I have, oh yeah, okay. So by this point in my spinning journey, I had started to overcorrect. Like I could see how like loose and loosey-goosey that spun yarn was, and so I started to go really tight when my spinning. And this stuff is like, I know you're looking at this through the camera, but it is like rope. I'm pretty sure I could like support my entire weight with like a single strand of this. It is so dense. It is so ropey. It is so uncomfortable. I cannot imagine ever like using this. But this is by this one I definitely spun through all the like sample merino that I had gotten with my original spindle, and this is Coriadale, which I don't hate. I mean, like I said, I do hate this yarn. It is like, this is terribly spun. It's so dense and so coarse. But Coriadale in general, though, I don't have a problem with. I don't spin with it a lot, but it's not. You could do worse, but you couldn't do much worse than these yarns. But like I said, you can at least see like the learning process going on in my brain. Like I said, I've definitely overcorrected, but at least I was making an attempt to like change the bad mistakes from the earliest yarn. So now we're moving on to yarns that I've actually started using in projects. And the next couple of things I have to show, these came from probably the end of 2023, maybe the beginning of 2024. And I'm finally getting kind of good at spinning a nice consistent yarn. And so I've got like a little bunch here, some greens and some brown burnt orange looking. And this is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Roving. It's a great, I love spinning with this. It's super easy to spin, super easy to draft. And by this point, I don't think I've quite gotten the concept of like yarn that is not super duper ropey. It's still a little more dense than I would prefer, but these individual strands are just so much more consistent than they were, and it's a lot less ropey. Like, this is yarn that I absolutely will knit with. I don't have a ton of it, so I haven't really ever thought of something I want to knit with. Let me pull the brown and put it up close so you can see it as well. But yeah, no, this is yarn I'm totally proud to show people this. And yeah, I would say, I don't know, this is probably maybe like DK. I know I have like measurements and weights for all these skeins somewhere, but they've been long lost. I'd have to dig for them. But yeah, like I would use this. And to prove that, I actually did. I have a hat I knit. So this is knit from the same Wool of the Andes Roving, but I spun it up differently. I kind of did a marled effect. And so basically what I did was, it's a 3-ply yarn, and I would just like pull off random lengths of the fiber of either green or orange fiber and spin it, and then pull off another length and of the other one, and make my singles that way so they would alternate between the two colors. And then I applied them together as a 3-ply. So in most places in the yarn, you have one color that is like more dominant than the other. So like the greens in this section or the browns in this section, because you have 2 plies that are one color and 1 ply that's the other color. But then every once in a while the stars will align and all 3 plies will be one single color. And so like in these stretches of green right here, it's all green or it's all brown orange. But yeah, this was a really fun spin. And like I said, this is probably the first thing that I knit that I use on a regular basis. I still wear this hat today. It's I would prefer maybe something a little bit longer and saggier today, but I love this hat. It's great. And I've definitely gotten past the ropiness problem. I've overcorrected, and then I've like corrected back the correct amount at this point. So that's my marled hat. And next up we have, this is not so much a project. This was a swatch. This was my first time spinning an unusual breed. So we have just a little swatch here of like stockinette and seed stitch and some ribbing, it looks like. And this is yarn that I spun from Gulf Coast Native wool. And I bought this wool at a fiber festival from the Ornery Shepherd, her real name is Michelle Field, and she is a shepherd here in Georgia. She's got a flock of Gulf Coast Native sheep. And Gulf Coast Native sheep are an interesting breed because they are basically at this point indigenous to the southern United States. I believe the Spanish brought them over in like the 1500s or the 1600s, or they brought over a breed of sheep that they had over to the southern United States and just like let them go in the forests. And the ones that survived and produced offspring that were better at surviving in the environment. And after several generations of this process, they ended up with a distinct breed of sheep that was like uniquely suited to surviving in the southern United States, which for a sheep can be kind of hard, especially in the summer, as it is very brutally hot down here sometimes. And so they are an unusual breed because they're rare, like they're an endangered breed, I believe, by this point. There are not a lot of people that raise them anymore. But they're unusual in that they don't have any wool on their legs or their faces. It's all in the middle body, which makes sense for the environment. Like there's rarely... in the South, I mean, it does get cold here in the winter, but like you rarely need to be like covered in wool from head to toe at any point in the winter here in the South. So that makes sense. And they are, uniquely resistant to like native like pathogens and parasites around here, which for a long time was a really big selling point for them. But unfortunately, with the advent, I guess not unfortunately, with the advent of like antibiotics and like farm medication, like breeds that would be susceptible to the parasites we have here can now survive comfortably. So like the fact that they're naturally resistant to these parasites is not as a big deal anymore. But it's a very interesting type of wool. I wish I had some of the roving left because it is so crazy crimpy. I cannot express just how crimpy and stretchy this yarn is. I mean, I can kind of like stretch the swatch on camera, but you can't. I just can't express like how like stretchy this is relative to like the wools you buy like in commercial balls of yarn. But yeah, so this is my Gulf Coast native swatch. I didn't buy a ton of it at the time because it was only like an ounce or so. Because when you hear what they are, you're like, oh, these are like sheep native to the South, so their wool is gonna be like gross and awful, isn't it? But it's really, I was scared that it was gonna be bad because of like how they were raised or whatever. But like it is surprisingly wearable. I would absolutely make garments out of this, but it's just a matter of getting more fiber. And yeah, so that's the Gulf Coast native spin. Now we are moving into my scarf spins. And this next scarf I have here, it is this beautiful green color. And it's kind of subtle. It's really hard to see the stitch pattern, but there is technically a diagonal rib thing going on here. And it's not the longest scarf in the world, but I wear this one all the time because you can kind of just like tie it in a knot, and then if you like tuck the ends in your jacket, no one can tell that it's a little bit too short. But I got this fiber at the same festival that I got the Gulf Coast native fiber from, and this is from AB Farm and Gardens here in Georgia, and it is run by a woman named Helen Boyle, and she raises Angora goats on her farm. And so this is a wool alpaca mohair blend. I'm not sure where the wool and the alpaca are sourced from, but the mohair is all her goats. Which I was very surprised to learn that Angora goats actually do pretty good in hot climates. That would not have been my guess. I was kind of surprised when I learned that there was someone raising them here in the South. But apparently, yeah, they sort of thrive in hot environments. So I guess it's a good thing that I am not the shepherd and they are. But I love this scarf. It's so soft. It's a little sheddy. The preparation of the fiber was Rolags, which was my first time doing that. And while I think it is maybe technically possible to do a woolen spun yarn on a drop spindle, it's much more difficult than doing it on a spinning wheel or an e-spinner. And so I wasn't able to do a woolen spin to match the woolen preparation of the Rolags, but instead I tried to keep it at a looser than normal spin, which it feels so soft, but it is a little sheddy. But I love this scarf. I've worn it for a couple winters now, and yeah, it's another great spin that I'm very happy with. So let's see, moving on. Oh, so this next scarf I actually showed it on the last episode, so I won't talk too long about it, but it is my infinity scarf that I made a couple months ago. And this fiber is also from A&B Farm and Gardens, and I bought this at a fiber festival. And it is a blend of Gulf Coast native and sari silk. So I'm not sure if she raised the Gulf Coast native sheep on her farm as well, but this is another great Gulf Coast spin I have. And like I said, I love the sari silk. I love the crazy colors that are going on in this. And this was another woolen preparation I got. Like I said, I don't remember the name of the exact preparation, but she described it as the step that you do right before you spin the fiber into Rolags. So once again, it's another woolen preparation, and once again, I didn't attempt a woolen spin on the drop spindle, but I did try to just spin it a little bit looser than I normally would to keep things as woolen-ish as possible. But this is a great scarf. The stitch pattern is from Barbara Walker's Treasury of Knitting Patterns Volume 1. It's a double-sided stitch, so you got some, it's kind of hard to see with the colors, but it is sand stitch on one side and dot stitch on the other. And I just like flip the sides from time to time as I saw fit. But I haven't had a lot of opportunity to wear this yet because I finished it in May, but I am looking forward to the fall and the winter to actually be able to give this one a try. And so now what else do we have? Oh, this is my last spin I've got. This is the one that I'm currently in process of working through. I've actually been working on this one for longer than those last two spins. This one's been going on for a year or so. And this is a sweater spin that I am attempting on my drop spindle. And so I'm making good progress, but obviously this is a very slow, sort of tedious thing. And once again, it is Wool of the Andes roving, and I did a marled spin again, but this time, instead of doing the weird like 2 colors, 3-ply thing, I did 3 plies, 3 colors, and it's not really showing up great on a camera, and I was a little bit worried that would be the case with this really dark red, but it's basically, we've got a dark red ply, we have an orange ply, and like it was billed as like a dark brown, but it's almost like black. It's so dark. But so I've got these 3 colors going on. I've been calling this this marl color, what was it, late autumn in the early 70s, because it feels very autumnal, but it also feels kind of retro in that it's a lot of like reds and oranges and browns. But at this point I have probably 400 to 500 grams of this spun, so I think I'm probably getting close to having enough for a sweater. I don't know. It's been so long at this point, I don't even know if I want a sweater. But that being said, I do have like a swatch knit up to see, like I was testing out some stitch patterns to see how this really heavily marled yarn could take a texture pattern. And so let's see, we've got just plain stockinette here, and it's whatever. But then I have a few like knit purl patterns, like this basket weave. You can kind of see it is a little obscured by the marling, and then this diamond thing you really can't see. So I gave some texture patterns a try on this. That was my first thought, and I'm not sure if that's going to work, and I haven't really had many thoughts beyond that. So like I said, I'm aiming for a sweater, and maybe one day this will be a sweater, but we'll see. But those are all of my spins. I believe I've hit every single one of them, and I thought I would do just a little behind the scenes about some of my equipment. Honestly, it's not the most exciting or the fanciest equipment, but I wanted to show it to people who maybe haven't tried spinning yet and are worried about giving it a try because it looks prohibitively expensive. And if you want it to be prohibitively expensive, it absolutely can be. Go out and you can absolutely put yourself in debt spinning, but it doesn't have to be. And I wanted to show that you can make like really good yarns without having to spend an arm and a leg. So the first thing I'm going to show are the spindles themselves. And I mean, there are lots of beautiful like handcrafters out there making beautiful wooden spindles. All of these are just from Amazon. This is the first one I got that came with the merino that I hated, and I'm not crazy. I don't really use this one anymore because the little notch in the whorl, it's just so thin that the yarn has a really bad tendency to slip out easily from it. But I moved on pretty quickly to more Amazon spindles. I have a couple identical ones now so that I don't have to unwind a single as soon as I get it spun up on a spindle. But this is my current spin for that sweater that I just showed you, and this is my empty spindle. I was a little upset, like I said, for a tool as simple as a spindle. Like, I mean, humans have been making these for thousands of years, so even like the cheapos on Amazon like can do a pretty good job because the tool itself is so simple. But I was a little upset that when I bought one, I thought it was going to be identical, but this one is like a little bit heavier, and I don't know if that would affect the spin, but I try not to like mix and match these two. I try to use this one for individual projects and this one for individual projects as well. And so after I have things spun up, you need bobbins to put your singles on. And I have never actually bought bobbins. I actually just bought a bag of bamboo grilling skewers that I wrap my singles onto. It's kind of tedious. Honestly, it takes about 30 minutes to do 75 to 100 grams of a bobbin, which is what these two are. But like it's another one of those things I just couldn't justify the expense at the beginning, and I've been doing the bamboo skewers so long that like I can't give them up now. But so these are two singles that are ready to be plied. Once that orange single that was on the spindle, once I'm done spinning that one, I'll ply these three together for another skein of the sweater spin. And so when I ply the yarns together, you might see some people put their bobbins in a lazy Kate, and I technically have that. Let's see if I can get this set up. But it is not so much, well, here we go. Let's see if I can get my bobbin inserted. Here we go. It's not so much a lazy Kate as it is a cardboard box that the original bobbin came in that I poked holes into. So we've got that set up for the 3 plies. I don't know what would happen if I ever wanted to do 4 plies. And then I've also added a couple of paper clips over here, little tensioning rods, because the singles have a tendency to twist up on themselves before I want them to. And so if I run the singles on the left and the right through these tensioning things, they stay apart long enough for them to come together when I want them to. So yeah, like literally, like you can go crazy, get a crazy fancy Kate, lazy Kate, or you can do cardboard box like I did. So yeah, that's my equipment setup. That's my equipment haul, which is not particularly exciting. But like I said, if you are considering spinning and you're worried that's going to cost too much, like I said, it can. There is plenty of expensive equipment out there to buy, but it doesn't have to. If you get a little creative and are willing to maybe be a little bit more patient with your primitive tools. Alrighty, so I thought the last section of the day we could do some works in progress now. This one you saw I was doing some work on last week. It is my zigzag hat pattern that I'm working on. Clearly, I mentioned it before, but I definitely am obsessed with zigzags right now. That is definitely top of mind in terms of designs. And I did it, I'm working on this hat with this fantastic variegated yarn from Machete Shop. And am trying to find ways to use variegated yarn that sort of leans into maybe the negative things that people don't like about them, but like paints it in a new light. And so one of the things that people are not crazy about in variegated yarns is the tendency to get that sort of like psychedelic striping that affects whenever you knit in stockinette. And so when you do the ribbing in corrugated rib, in 2-color rib, you still get those like blobs of different colors, but the stripes are not as distinct and not as like fuzzy and psychedelic-y. So like I said, I really enjoy like the purples and the green blobs, but it's not as distinct. And the other thing that can be difficult with variegated yarns is just like how many color changes there are and how quickly those color changes happen. And I sort of embraced that with the Pearl Bump color work. So while you do like basically every Pearl Bump is a different color, because those bumps feel more like distinct from one another as opposed to the V's that are like stacked very neatly within one another. It's sort of like you're still able to see that zigzag design even though like the color changes are like near constant across the stripes themselves. So I'm almost done knitting the sample with this one, and this was my first pattern where I really had to like think about grading and different sizes. Like, so the cowl I mentioned earlier in the finished objects, it does come in different sizes, but the repeat is, you know, so the construction is so simple and the repeat is so small that it's very easy to make it whatever size you want. But when it comes to like a color work hat, that is not always the case. So I've really been working on my grading and my sizing. And I don't know if anyone would be interested in doing a test knit for a hat, something like this, but if you would, maybe like leave a comment or something, because I would definitely like to set one up, and I'd definitely like to see some people maybe give this a try in the other sizes, because basically I started from like a schematic, like like standard hat sizes, but you can't quite fit like the pattern repeat that you want exactly in those like schematic suggested sizes. So I had to do some fudging, and I would love to make sure that like all those numbers are working out. But so yeah, if you're interested in testing something like this, definitely leave a comment down below, and I might start getting something organized around that. But this is my zigzag hat. Like I said, it's Machete Shop is the variegated yarn, and the colorway is Steralfer, and the gray is Hedgehog Fibers in Cinder. And that's about it. This should be done by next week, hopefully. I'm really excited. I have the swatch that I was working on last week, which is basically another one completed hat of this. But I was practicing. I wanted to see if I could get these nice, like, distinct decrease lines in the reverse stockinette, and those are showing up pretty nicely, even with like the crazy color changes. This is another example of where you can kind of like lean into the color changes without them just like completely muddying things up. But if I can manage it, I would really love to get these decrease lines to zigzag in the same way that the color work stripes zigzag. So hopefully this will be done. The actual sample version will be done next week, and those decrease lines will be all zigzag and cool looking. So that's about it for the hat. And next up, we have something that I discussed last week as well. Not quite as exciting, just a boring old sock. This is just one of millions, not millions, but many socks that I've knit over the years. I've always got one going on the needles, and they're generally pretty boring. Like, I knit these from leftover yarn almost always. This is Wool of the Andes Sport Weight yarn, and I just love, like, I know it's super boring, but these, like, I want them to be boring because the point, like, they don't make me feel good because they're the prettiest things I've ever seen. Like, I like the feeling I get because they are like a necessity. Like, I have to wear socks. Even if I couldn't knit socks, I would still have to procure socks somehow. And so I really like that I'm it to like create an actual necessity, something that I actually need for myself. And it's one of those things, like, because it's a necessity, I don't really care that it be too particularly beautiful or pretty or anything like that. So they're generally, you know, single color, maybe contrast color with a heel. They're almost always heel flap and gusset, but I've gotten pretty far since the last time I talked about this one. I believe I was finished with the heel flap and the heel turn on the last episode, and I've gotten through the gusset decreases at this point, and I'm on to just plain foot knitting. It's not really exciting. I've gotten into the habit of watching a movie in the evening and knitting on this. There's a lot of sadness and sorrow knit into this sock because I've been watching a streak of horror movies while I've knit this. So hopefully that doesn't make this pair cursed. But yeah, this is just a pretty plain, boring sock, but this is my bread and butter. I've almost always got one on the needles. So that's about it for that. Alrighty, so the last thing I have to show you today, I don't know if you can really call it a work in progress because the progress has not actually technically begun. It's more of a swatch and some yarn and an idea, but this is going to end up being my my next pattern design. And so basically I have been trying out some techniques with two color traveling twisted stitches. So some people might call them Bavarian twisted stitches, left twist, right twist. I found quite a few different terminology names for this technique, but it's basically where it's kind of like proto cabling. The technique involves like knitting two stitches together and then knitting one of those stitches once more, and it sort of twists the two stitches around one another, which creates this like feeling of like traveling or movement. And so I've been trying to work out how to do that in two colors and get the zigzags and everything to move like they should. And I think my cat might be coming in to say hello. I don't think he likes this design idea. He's got a lot of opinions about this. But anyways, yeah, so I've been working on this swatch and perfecting like how to do traveling twisted stitches in two colors. And I think I finally have that down. And so my next project is going to be a shawl. And I guess I'm going to have to let the cat say hello since he's here. This is my cat Gato, my child. He's a pretty old man, but he's usually pretty chill, but he has a lot to say about everything. He's pretty vocal, and he's always up in my business, so I'm not surprised that he's finally interrupted me. If anything, it's shocking that it's taken him this long to actually get in here and say hello. And sometimes he lets me hold him like a baby, but he only tolerates it for short spans of time. So I guess we'll let him say goodbye and I'll put him back down and I'll get back to the knitting. Oh, there you go. Okay, anyways, so working on a shawl, two-color traveling twisted stitches, and I have found this yarn that I have never seen before. And okay, I'm gonna have to pause and address him. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I think I have the cat placated now, and I'll get back to my shawl design. I was saying I found a new brand of yarn that I'd never seen before in my local yarn store, and this is Duna by Amano Yarns, and it is a blend of 60% cotton and 40% alpaca. And I can't believe how nice this feels. It does not feel like it has any substantial amount of cotton at all. It feels almost completely like an animal fiber to me, which really drew me to it. I'm typically not crazy about a cotton, but I'll tolerate it if it's in a blend like this. And I was just, like I said, I was very surprised by the way the yarn feels all skeined up, because it feels like almost completely alpaca. I would not guess that there was any cotton in this. But right now, this is the yarn that I have in mind for this new project. And basically my vision, my concept, which hopefully is not going to dominate and destroy everything this time. My concept is I found a sort of like honeycomb traveling twisted stitch design in one of Barbara Walker's Treasury of Knitting Patterns stitch dictionaries. And so I want to do sort of like a decaying honeycomb pattern where you get like the full effect for a while, and then as you go up the shawl, certain lines start to fall off and drop off, so it starts to decay into just plain stockinette or something like that. Anyways, that's the idea, but I have no idea. I still need to actually swatch up some traveling twisted stitches in this yarn, because I have no idea like how it's going to behave doing that. I have no idea how it's going to feel in drape doing like having the strands or whatever on the wrong side of the work, but I'm excited to give this a try. And yeah, be on the lookout. It's not going to be done anytime soon, but it's going to get that way. And I think that's going to be it for the works in progress today. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for episode 2. If you made it this far, thanks for watching all the way through. I really appreciate it. If you don't mind, go ahead and give this video a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. They're coming in the future. And also, if you are interested in maybe doing a test knit for the hat that I showed in the works in progress, the zigzag hat, go ahead and leave a comment below. And if there's enough like interest and enthusiasm for that, I'll definitely set that up. This is my first one, but I would absolutely be excited to give something like that a try. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.